Moderate Democrats are sweating through a hot socialist summer. Zohran Mamdani is closing in on the Democratic nomination for New York City mayor, and he's already stirring up controversy. The socialist refused 3 times to condemn hateful rhetoric that calls for violence against Israelis and Jews.
Do you condemn that phrase, globalize the intifada?
That's not language that I use. The language that I use and the language that I will continue to use to lead this city is that which speaks clearly to my intent, which is an intent grounded in a belief in universal human rights.
But do you actually condemn it?
I don't believe that the role of the mayor is to police speech.
So why not just condemn it?
My concern is to start to walk down the line of language and making clear what language I believe is permissible or impermissible takes me into a place similar to that of the president who is looking to do those very kinds of things.
Okay, what? Anyway, Zohran had no hesitation condemning billionaires and the white neighborhoods he wants to tax.
Explain why you are bringing race into your tax proposal.
That is just a description of what we see right now. It's not driven by race. It's more of an assessment of what neighborhoods are being undertaxed versus overtaxed. I don't think that we should have billionaires because, frankly, it is so much money in a moment of such inequality.
And President Trump is sizing up the man he might have to work with.
He's a communist. I think it's very bad for New York. I don't know that he's going to get in. If he does get in, I'm going to be president, and he's going to have to do the right thing, or they're not getting any money. Whoever's mayor of New York is going to have to behave themselves, or the federal government is coming down very tough on them financially.
He said if Benjamin Netanyahu comes to New York, he's going to have him arrested.
Oh, he's a radical left lunatic.
So this was burning up the airwaves, partly because it's not just a New York story, in my opinion, Kennedy. I feel like this is a tale of things to come, and it's coming to a city near you, because there are patterns here on behavior, on the slogans, and the tactics on which he is doing this campaign.
Yeah, and you know, this old song and dance has been used over and over again, but it's a Ponzi scheme because there's always a new group of voters who, you know, look at this stuff and they see it all and they take it at face value. It is a very superficial, very slick message, incredibly well packaged. But if you look beneath the surface and you look where socialism and democratic socialism has harmed communities throughout the country, you don't have to look very far. You know, you can go to Chicago and let's go Brandon Johnson, the mayor there, has done a great disservice to the city. And there are writers there, reporters, and citizens who are warning New Yorkers, don't fall for it. It is a scam. He doesn't have your back. He is not going to improve these neighborhoods. He's going to turn Madison Avenue into the market of sweethearts like they have in Roosevelt Avenue in his home district of Queens. So it's incredibly dangerous, but he's done a great job targeting voters who haven't heard it before. And my advice to them is talk to the exiles from places like Eastern Europe and Cuba, where socialism kills. Or, you know, talk to some of the free market reformers in Sweden who saw their GDP swirling down the toilet when they tried to be a socialist country, the kind of country that Bernie Sanders admires. But that system of governance and economics doesn't exist in Sweden anymore. They had to change. They had to move to the right to survive.
Would you put Portland in that same category?
Absolutely. Portland and Seattle, all these cities where they have ultra-liberal DAs who hate cops, they hold these cities hostage. They give all the rights to homeless people and make sure they have as many drugs as possible. And they call it harm reduction, but they don't get people into rehab. They have abandoned the drug courts, and they are human waste that they have just thrown onto the streets.
Harold, he is kind of the only one that has figured out a way to go through the window that opened when basically Mayor Adams decided to run as an independent. He and Cuomo felt too old, too scandalized, too like the campaign was very lackluster, didn't even try. And he just said, I'm going to go right through here. And he created a lane. And now the Democrats are looking at that. Wait, so who is our leader? Is it Hakeem Jeffries? Is it Schumer? Or is it this guy?
So it's always good to have Greg Gutfeld back around the table.
Thank
brother.
you,
It's good to
Harold.
see you.
I missed you. Did you get my card?
I didn't.
Dana, you asked a couple questions in there. Now, the leader of the Democratic Party here in the city, he has become a face of it, Mamdani. I still think Eric Adams, as the incumbent, would make a claim to that. And I don't know what Andrew Cuomo is going to do. I think he still has a line on the ballot. But let's step back. I didn't understand his interview with Kirsten Walker. He said that he didn't want to add race or introduce race to this, but he doesn't want to police speech. But I guess it's okay for him to add any kind of speech he wants and just wrap it or defend it with the notion of free speech. I wonder what he thinks about the word slavery. Is that something you don't want to talk about? Or what he thinks about the N-word? Does he have friends who use that word and we may misunderstand it? To talk about wealth and race, I think, is the most racist thing to do. So I hope if he's going to be, he is the leader, the nominee for the Democratic Party. I hope he understands that, and I hope he reassesses how he talks about these things, because a lot of people are listening and a lot of people are reacting. Two, I give him credit in this regard to your question, Dana. He figured out something we've been saying around his table, that affordability is the issue on most Americans' mind. And I wouldn't argue with Paul, public safety and security is as well, but affordability was a big, big issue. And the person who grabbed it the best, who talked about it the best, who developed answers after tackling the issue the best, was Donald Trump. His answers, he's diagnosed the challenge, I think, here in New York, right? That prices are way high for housing. Prices are way high for small business owners. But to give away everything free as the answer, I think it's hard to say to small business owners who pay taxes, who work hard, who want to instill a work ethic in their employees and their children and those around them, that we should just give everything away for free. So whomever is his leading opponent, whether it's Andrew Cuomo or Eric Adams is certainly on the ballot, that they craft a message around these things to go after him and make him answer. How are you assessing wealth through race, but you can't condemn global intifada? You can't condemn or acknowledge the state of Israel's right to exist. I mean, these are real questions I think he's going to have to answer.
He wants free rent. He wants $30 per hour for minimum wage, which basically means that every business is going to have to figure out a way to come up with all of that money. And Paul, the other thing that he had been for is defund the police. And you lived through that. And he's trying to sort of weaselly walk himself out of it, but it's there in black and white.
Look, we're going to get to know him a lot better before game time here in November, all right? And this is very early in the game, so right now it's got to be all teased out. Let's go through a couple of things. First of all, how far would you be able to get away with saying globalize apartheid? Because that's how that hits the ear of Jewish Americans. To globalize the intifada means, okay, the intifada is an uprising in the Middle East. You can attack Jews. If you're globalizing it, that means you can do it anywhere. Furthermore, he says, you know what, mayors shouldn't police speech. Yet at the same time, he is saying, I am going to crack down on, quote unquote, bigotry and hate speech in the 5 boroughs. And he mentions MAGA, naturally, of course. So that's very contradictory. Let's remember something. He got in because I would argue he's the first guy to truly weaponize. This is the first TikTok campaign.
Yep.
He's the one who figured out how to weaponize TikTok to get him in. So when you consider the fact that it's received wisdom on both the left and the right, that TikTok is a Chinese influence operation, which it is, okay? The American TikTok looks very different from the TikTok that you get in Beijing. If that's the case, is it any shock that his electorate tracks closer to Beijing than it does to New York or Washington? Of course it does, because that's what they're getting. They're getting Beijing's message. Now, I'm not saying he's a Beijing agent, he's a Chinese agent, he's part of the CCP. I'm not alleging that, but it's the ideology. And that's just basically there. Real quick, let's go through the metrics of the vote since you bring it up. What he's doing right now is he understands that chances are Cuomo's not going to be there by game day, which means his main adversary is going to be Eric Adams. So what he's doing is he's leaning very hard into the black vote. He knows that Adams is going to peel that off. So that's why you see him. He's meeting with the Reverend Al. He's with Spike Lee. He's quoting all of a sudden he's talking about Reverend King, which you've never heard him do. And he's doing this thing. Well, I said white. I didn't mean white. What he's trying to do is peel off 10%, 15% of the black vote. Because remember something, Cuomo got the black vote over him. He knows that. He's a clever politician. But let me just close by saying this. This is the fault, in my estimation, and it is a fault, because this is just a disaster. We get 8 years of this guy's going to be nothing left in New York. All right. This is the fault of the teachers.
Yep.
Because the kids don't understand that if you just take one look at history, name anywhere, a socialist/communist regime, and he is a communist, according to all the specific, I could go through it, he tracks to all the communist ideology. He's talking about seizing the means of production. I mean, that's right out of Marx. But punting on that, the bottom line is, if you look at anybody who inhabits the space he inhabits throughout history, not one has ever succeeded without devolving into a dictatorship. China, Russia, Cambodia, Cuba, Venezuela, they're all nightmare regimes. Essentially, New Yorkers of a certain age, under 25, completely ignorant, are voting for a guy who is telling them, I am the state. I'm going to make the decisions. You run it, go ahead. That's what they're doing.
Greg, within about 2 years of becoming a U.S. citizen, he was joining protests demanding statues of founding fathers be taken down and calling America a racist country. And that's the kind of thing that really turns people against overall. Like, you get the polarization that gets stronger.
Yeah, also, he's just not deep.
No.
This is a very shallow person. This guy makes David Hogg look like Margaret Thatcher. And I would be careful on how you criticize him, because remember, the Democrats' fault with Trump was that they went after him without offering an alternative. Yep. So the accusations of Islamism, is that it? Islamism?
Like
Islamism, whatever.
Like
it's going to feed into Islamophobia. Calling him a socialist in New York isn't an insult. It's a virtue signal for the luxury believers. You know, the hard left are going to flock to the person that we say creates the most harm. And in a low turnout city, that's all you need. A lot of people are really comfortable in New York, and they're not even going to pay attention. This guy's going to sneak in. I think you need to explain to these people what socialism is. It's redistribution. To get free stuff, you have to take it from everybody else. So it's theft. They're taking from your parents to pay for what? Imagine government-run supermarkets. Imagine a 7-Eleven that looks like the DMV, but with even less goods. That's how dismal and depressing it's going to be. So he's the walking, breathing definition of the luxury belief. That is the stance that only the elites can endure, because the brunt of the policies will destroy the lower class. They can't afford this. So it's easy, like you said, to vote for defunding the police if you have private security. It's easy to promote sanctuary cities when you don't live near the Roosevelt Hotel, or you're not competing for jobs in which the wages keep getting lower and lower. So I would just, for people that don't know this guy, remember, it wasn't Daniel Penny he defended. It was the deranged perpetrator, Jordan Neely, a psychopath who threatened to kill citizens in the New York City subway, who was a violent offender. That's the choice he made. So if you vote for this guy, you're making that choice too. This guy will send New York City back to the swirling muck that it once was in the 70s, but it's not going to happen with a wide-eyed, crazy, freak. It's a glib, polished elite, airbrushed by the Soros Foundation. The worst part about it is, what do we do? I live in a neighborhood where a woman was nearly murdered around the corner from me by a deranged homeless guy. One guy was murdered 2 doors from me in the end of the last summer. What could happen? Like, when do we move? Like, when does a company decide that it's no longer safe for its workers to be here? Yeah. That's a decision, because you know what? I love having a career, but I cherish my survival as well.
And the blessing you have is you have that option. So many of the people he wants to represent don't have the option to just get up and move out of the city.
That's right. What'll happen is the people who can afford to do it will pay their way out of it. This is really what happens.
But the vast majority of people have to
stuck
stay,
here.
and that's what people have to pay attention to.
Well, we'll see what happens. I also think that both parties are failing to provide true economic policy options that give people an opportunity and hope, so that they can also realize the American dream. So there's an opportunity there.
Click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You won't get it anywhere else.